I walked out of that meeting, destroyed the one document that could save them, and 3 months later, my tormentor ended up in a psychiatric ward. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Sarah Chen. I moved to the States when I was 12, worked my way through college, and by 32, I thought I'd finally made it. I had a stable job at Meridian Solutions, a mid-sized consulting firm that handled time-sensitive client work, the kind of place where missing a deadline could cost hundreds of thousands in penalties. I was their client services coordinator, which meant I was the person who made sure everything ran on time, every time. I'd been there 2 years. I loved it. The team was small enough that we knew each other's coffee orders. Management trusted me. I'd built systems from the ground up that kept us running smoothly even during our busiest quarters. We handled everything from compliance audits to regulatory filings for our clients. Every document had to be perfect. Every deadline had to be met. That was my job, and I was good at it. The office was in a renovated warehouse in the business district. Exposed brick, high ceilings, those industrial windows that let in streams of afternoon light. 23 employees total. You couldn't hide in a place that small. Everyone knew everyone's business, or thought they did. Then there was Mike Donovan. Mike had been there 5 years, senior staff, the guy everyone wanted on their team. Charming, always knew the right thing to say in meetings, remembered people's birthdays. He had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room when he talked to you. Management adored him. The CEO would literally light up when Mike walked into our office. If you needed someone to close a difficult client, you sent Mike. If you had a client threatening to leave, Mike would take them to lunch and they'd come back singing our praises. I liked him too, at first. He'd helped me when I started, showed me the shortcuts in our database system, warned me about which clients were difficult, brought me coffee when I was buried in deadline work. I discovered the fraud during a routine quarterly audit in late September. Nothing dramatic. I was cross-referencing invoices against our internal billing logs, the kind of administrative task I did every 3 months. I noticed some numbers didn't match. Small differences at first. $100 here, $200 there. Could have been data entry errors. But something felt off. I pulled 6 months of records, then a year. The pattern became clear. Mike had been overcharging clients and pocketing the difference. He'd falsified documentation to cover it. The method was actually clever. He'd bill clients for rush processing fees that didn't exist or add percentage points to legitimate fees, small enough amounts that clients wouldn't question it. Then he'd modify our internal records to show lower amounts, and the difference would go into an account he controlled. The timestamps on his modified files gave him away. He'd been editing records at odd hours, 2 in the morning, 5 a.m., times when no one else would be in the system to see the changes happening in real time. It had been going on for at least 18 months, maybe longer. I stopped counting at $47,000, and I wasn't even through a full 2 years of records. I sat at my desk for an hour just staring at the spreadsheet. My hands were shaking. He was everyone's friend. Management loved him, but I had evidence, column after column of it, transaction IDs, client names, dates, amounts, everything documented and timestamped. I thought about not reporting it. I actually considered it, just closing the file and pretending I'd never seen anything. But I couldn't. It wasn't just wrong, it was theft from our clients. People trusted us with their compliance work, their regulatory filings. This could destroy the company if it came out the wrong way. I reported it to upper management the next morning. Our CEO, Patricia Vance, and our operations director, Tom Brennan. I handed over everything in a sealed envelope, printed spreadsheets, USB drive with the source files, a 2-page summary I'd written the night before. Patricia's face went white as she read through it. Tom just kept shaking his head. "We'll handle this discreetly," Patricia said. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention, Sarah. This must have been difficult." I nodded. My throat felt tight. "We need you to keep this completely confidential while we investigate," Tom added. "Don't discuss it with anyone, not even other management." I agreed, went back to my desk, tried to work like nothing had happened. I thought I was doing the right thing. I had no idea what I'd just unleashed. The investigation took less than 2 weeks. They brought in an outside forensic accountant, pulled Mike's computer records, interviewed clients. The evidence was overwhelming. Mike's fraud was extensive enough that they couldn't ignore it, couldn't sweep it under the rug even if they'd wanted to. He was fired on a Thursday afternoon, October 14th. I remember because it was raining. Patricia called him into her office at 3 o'clock. He walked out 15 minutes later carrying a cardboard box with his desk belongings. His face was red. He didn't look at anyone. Security escorted him out of the building. There was no announcement, but in an office of 23 people, word travels fast. By 4 o'clock, everyone knew Mike was gone. By 5 o'clock, everyone knew why. By Monday morning, everyone knew I was the one who reported it. The atmosphere changed immediately. People stopped chatting in the break room when I walked in. Conversations would just die mid-sentence. I'd round a corner and catch people whispering, and they'd go quiet when they saw me. The looks I got in the hallway told me everything. I was the person who got Mike fired. Never mind that Mike got himself fired by stealing from clients. Never mind that what he did could have destroyed the entire company. I was the one who reported it. I was the snitch, the rat, the person who couldn't just let things go. David from accounting stopped saying good morning to me. Emma from client relations wouldn't make eye contact. Even Tom, who thanked me for reporting the fraud, started avoiding me in the halls. Jessica Torres had started at Meridian about 8 months before all this happened, back in February. She worked a parallel role to mine, handling a different client portfolio. I managed the financial services clients, she handled healthcare and pharmaceuticals. Similar work, different sectors. We'd been friendly enough, not close, but we'd grab lunch occasionally at the Thai place down the street, compare notes on difficult clients, complain about the database system that crashed every other week. Jessica was 28, ambitious, one of those people who came in early and stayed late, always volunteering for extra projects, always trying to impress management. She dressed sharply, talked confidently, had opinions on everything. Mike had mentored her when she first started. He'd done the same thing for her that he'd done for me, showed her the systems, introduced her to key clients, gave her advice on handling Patricia's management style. I'd see them having coffee together in the break room, Mike explaining something while Jessica took notes. After he was fired, Jessica stopped speaking to me entirely, just went cold overnight, avoided eye contact, would leave the room if I entered. If we had to interact for work, her responses were clipped, professional to the point of hostility. I tried to talk to her once, about a week after Mike left, caught her in the parking garage as we were both leaving for the day. Jessica, can we talk? She didn't stop walking. I don't have anything to say to you. I know you're upset about Mike, but... She spun around. Her eyes were hard. You destroyed him, you know that? He made one mistake and you destroyed his entire career. He has a family, Sarah, a mortgage, kids. Did you think about that? He stole from our clients. Everyone makes mistakes. You could have talked to him first, given him a chance to fix it, but you went straight to management like some kind of... She stopped herself, shook her head. Just stay away from me. She got in her car and drove off. I stood there in the parking garage for a long time, listening to the echo of her engine fading away. I didn't know it then, but Jessica was about to make the next 9 months a living hell. It started small. Week 1, maybe 2 after Mike left. Jessica handled some shared paperwork that crossed between our portfolios. Client names, project codes, basic administrative stuff. Some of our healthcare clients also had financial divisions, so there was natural overlap in our work. She started deliberately misspelling things. Client surnames mostly. Johnson became Johnson. Martinez became Martinez. Patel became Patil. Small changes, easy to miss if you were moving fast. Then she'd hand me the paperwork. I'd process it as written because that's what the document said. That's what I was trained to do. Process the information as provided, then verify against the database. And she'd send an email to management, CC to half the office, pointing out my carelessness. Sarah processed the Johnson account under the wrong client name. This is the 3rd error this week. I'm concerned about the accuracy of our client files. The first time it happened, I thought it was a genuine mistake. I corrected it professionally, reply all with the scanned original showing her handwriting. This appears to be a transcription issue from the intake form. I've updated our records to reflect the correct spelling per our database. But it kept happening. Different clients, different types of errors, always small enough to seem like honest mistakes, always positioned to make me look careless. I started keeping the original documents, scanning them before I processed anything Jessica gave me, creating a paper trail. But the damage was already done. The seed was planted. Sarah makes errors. Sarah is careless. Sarah's work needs to be double-checked. Jessica started doing exactly that, double-checking my work publicly, in team meetings. She'd question my processes. Sarah, are you sure that's the right approach for the Henderson account? I'm just concerned about accuracy given the recent errors. Management would nod. Good catch, Jessica. Sarah, let's make sure we're being thorough here. Walk us through your process. I'd have to defend work that was already correct, explain decisions that didn't need explaining. And every time I did, it reinforced the narrative that I needed oversight, that my work was questionable. Jessica never questioned anyone else's work, only mine, week after week, meeting after meeting. My contributions to discussions started getting shot down. I'd suggest something, Jessica would find a reason it wouldn't work. 2 weeks later, someone else would suggest the same thing, and Jessica would think it was brilliant. I started documenting everything, every email, every interaction, every meeting where Jessica undermined me. I kept a notebook at my desk. Date, time, what was said, who was present. Because I knew where this was heading. I filed my first complaint to management in week 3, brought printed emails, timestamps, patterns showing the deliberate errors, met with Tom in his office, laid it all out. He listened politely, made sympathetic noises. I hear you, Sarah. This must be frustrating. But I think what we're seeing here is just a personality clash. You and Jessica have different working styles. Some friction is natural when you're working closely together. It's not a personality clash. She's deliberately sabotaging my work. I think that's a strong word. Jessica is still new. She's probably being overly cautious, trying to prove herself. Why don't you and Jessica grab coffee and work this out? Clear the air. I left his office knowing nothing would change. We did not grab coffee. Month 2 became month 3. November turned into December. The office put up Christmas decorations. Someone organized a secret Santa. I didn't participate. Jessica's tactics evolved. We had a team meeting about improving client intake processes. This was early December, a Tuesday morning. Patricia wanted ideas for streamlining our workflow for the new year. I proposed a new system I'd been developing, color-coded by urgency level with automated reminders built into our database. Red for critical deadlines within 48 hours, yellow for 1-week deadlines, green for routine processing. The system would send automatic alerts at preset intervals, 24 hours before deadline, 12 hours, 6 hours. No more missed deadlines. No more last-minute panic. I'd spent 2 weeks building a prototype, had mock-ups, had workflow diagrams. Jessica dismissed it immediately, didn't even let me finish the presentation. That seems impractical, too complicated. Our clients won't understand a color coding system, and the alerts would just create noise. People would start ignoring them. Patricia nodded slowly. Those are valid concerns. Let's table this for now and revisit in the new year. I tried to push back. The prototype addresses those concerns. The client-facing interface is simple, just traffic light colors, and the alerts are customizable per user. Let's table it, Sarah. Patricia's tone was final. Management moved on to other topics. I sat there with my mock-ups and diagrams, feeling like an idiot. 2 days later, Thursday afternoon, Jessica scheduled a meeting with Patricia and Tom. I wasn't invited. I found out about it from Emma, who mentioned it in passing. Friday morning, Patricia called an all-hands meeting. I want to talk about a new initiative Jessica brought to me. She's developed an innovative approach to our intake workflow. Jessica stood up, pulled up a presentation on the conference room screen. Color-coded urgency levels, red, yellow, green, automated database alerts, 24 hours, 12 hours, 6 hours. My exact system, my exact color scheme. She'd even used the phrase intuitive categorization that I'd used in Tuesday's meeting, word for word. The room erupted in enthusiasm. This is brilliant. Why didn't we think of this before? This will save us so much time. Patricia was beaming. Excellent work, Jessica. This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need. I want you to take the lead on implementation. I sat there, frozen, watching Jessica accept congratulations, watching people praise my idea like she'd invented it. I spoke up, kept my voice level, professional. Actually, I suggested this same system in Tuesday's team meeting. The room went quiet. Jessica turned to me with this perfect expression of concerned confusion, eyebrows slightly raised, head tilted. I think you're misremembering, Sarah. We talked about several ideas that day. You mentioned something about alerts, but it was pretty different from this. It was exactly this. I have the mock-ups I presented. Tom shifted uncomfortably. Patricia looked between us. Well, regardless of where the initial seed came from, Jessica has clearly developed it into a comprehensive proposal. The important thing is that it's a good idea. Jessica, why don't you take the lead on implementation? Sarah, you can assist since you've been thinking along similar lines. Assist on my own project. That was the moment I understood. It didn't matter what was true. It mattered who they believed, and they believed Jessica. The meeting ended. People clustered around Jessica asking questions about implementation timelines. I gathered my mock-ups and left. I went to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall for 15 minutes, just breathing, trying not to cry. Month 4, January. The pattern was firmly established. Jessica took credit for things, I assisted. Jessica questioned my work, I defended it. Jessica was innovative and thorough. I was careless and needed oversight. Then Jessica started treating me like her personal assistant. It started small. Sarah, can you make copies of this for me? The copier near my desk is jammed. I did it the first time, trying to be collegial, trying to not make waves. Then it was, Sarah, I need these files organized by end of day, alphabetical by client name, then by date. Can you handle that? That's not really part of my role. It's just helping out. We're all on the same team, right? I did it. Hated myself for it, but I did it. Then, Sarah, grab me a coffee while you're up. Light cream, 2 sugars. I was at my desk. I wasn't up. I'm actually in the middle of something. It'll just take a minute. I looked at her. She was smiling, this pleasant, expectant smile. Other people were watching. No, I said. Get your own coffee. Her smile didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. Wow, okay, just trying to be friendly. She got up and got her own coffee, made a point of sighing heavily as she walked past my desk. That afternoon, she went to Tom. I know because he pulled me aside the next morning. Sarah, I've been getting some concerns about your attitude. Jessica says you're not being a team player, refusing to help with basic tasks. She asked me to get her coffee. That's not part of my job description. It's just coffee, Sarah. Is this really the hill you want to die on? We need everyone working together here. The friction between you and Jessica is affecting team morale. The friction is coming from Jessica. That's not what I'm hearing from others. Others, plural. Jessica had been building her case. I filed my second complaint that week, brought more documentation, more patterns, more examples. Tom listened, took notes, said they'd look into it. Nothing happened. Month 5, February, a year since Jessica had started. The anniversary went unremarked, but I remembered. I overheard Jessica talking about some of my clients. I worked with a lot of immigrant-owned businesses, people like my parents had been, first-generation Americans, children of immigrants. People trying to build something in a new country while navigating systems they didn't fully understand yet. I took pride in that work. I knew what it was like to struggle with bureaucracy in a language that wasn't your first, to feel like everyone around you knew some secret set of rules you'd never been taught. I went the extra mile for those clients, explained things in detail, followed up multiple times, made sure they understood every step of the process. Jessica was in the break room with David from accounting. I was around the corner at the water cooler, refilling my bottle. They didn't know I was there. I don't know how Sarah deals with these people, Jessica said. Her voice had this edge of disgust. Half of them can barely speak English, and don't even get me started on their documentation. Probably half of it's fake anyway. You know how it is with these immigrant businesses. David laughed uncomfortably. I mean, some of them do have language barriers. Language barriers, right. More like they're trying to scam the system, and Sarah just eats it up, probably because she feels sorry for them or something, but it makes us look unprofessional when we're dealing with clients who can't even fill out a form correctly. I froze. My hand was still on the water cooler button. Water was overflowing from my bottle, spilling onto the floor. I'm an immigrant. Came here when I was 12, barely speaking English myself. Spent years in ESL classes, worked twice as hard as my classmates to keep up. Watched my parents struggle with forms and applications and officials who treated them like they were stupid because they had accents. But Jessica didn't know that. I kept my personal life private at work. Didn't talk about my background, my family, where I came from. It was easier that way, less complicated. I walked into the break room. David saw me and his face went white. He grabbed his coffee and left quickly, mumbling something about a meeting. Jessica turned around, saw me, saw the water dripping from my bottle, the puddle on the floor. I kept my voice quiet, controlled. That kind of talk is completely inappropriate. These are our clients. They deserve respect, the same respect you'd give any other client. Jessica just looked at me, didn't smile, didn't frown, didn't apologize, didn't defend herself, just looked at me for a long moment with this flat, unreadable expression. Then she turned and walked out of the break room without saying a word. I cleaned up the spilled water. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the paper towels. 3 days later, I was called into HR. We didn't have a full HR department. The company was too small. We had Karen, who handled payroll and benefits and personnel issues. She had a tiny office next to Patricia's. Karen asked me to close the door. She had a folder on her desk. Sarah, I need to talk to you about a complaint that's been filed. My stomach dropped. A complaint? Jessica Torres has reported that you made inappropriate comments about some of our clients, specifically derogatory remarks about immigrants and non-native English speakers. I sat there completely stunned. The words didn't make sense. It was like she was speaking another language. What? Karen opened the folder. Jessica has provided a written statement. She says that on February 9th, you made disparaging comments about immigrant clients in the break room. She says you referred to them as people who can barely speak English and questioned the authenticity of their documentation. February 9th, 3 days ago, the break room conversation. Karen, that's not what happened. Jessica said those things. I confronted her about it afterward. She says you became defensive when she challenged your comments, that you told her to mind her own business and walked away. That's a complete lie. I was the one David was there. He heard the whole thing. I've spoken with David. He says he doesn't recall the specific conversation clearly. He remembers you and Jessica having some kind of disagreement, but he'd already left the break room when it happened. He'd lied, or been intimidated to claim he didn't remember. Either way, my only witness was gone. I spent the next hour in that office, trying to explain, trying to make Karen understand. My voice kept rising, getting more emotional, which made me sound defensive, which probably made it worse. I produced my documentation, 6 months of records, emails showing Jessica's pattern of undermining me, incidents I'd reported to Tom, witness statements from clients who'd worked with both of us and could attest to how I treated them. I told Karen about the fraud investigation, about Mike, about Jessica's connection to him. Karen listened, took notes, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. I need you to understand something, I said finally. I'm an immigrant. I came here when I was 12. My parents are immigrants. The idea that I would make those kinds of comments about other immigrants is absurd. Karen blinked. I didn't know that. I don't talk about it at work, but I need you to understand. Jessica is lying. She's the one who made those comments. I confronted her, and now she's turned it around on me. Karen closed the folder. I appreciate you sharing that, Sarah. I'll include it in my notes. But at this point, we have 2 conflicting accounts and no definitive evidence either way. I'm going to mark this as inconclusive. We'll monitor the situation going forward. Monitor the situation. The same thing Tom had said. You understand what she's doing, right? I couldn't keep the frustration out of my voice. This is retaliation. I reported Mike's fraud. Jessica blames me, and she's been systematically sabotaging me for months. I understand you feel that way, but I need to remain objective. I'll be documenting this conversation, and I'll be keeping a close watch on any further incidents. I left her office feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. That's when I realized Jessica didn't just want me gone, she wanted me destroyed. She wanted my reputation ruined. She wanted people to think I was incompetent, careless, and prejudiced. And it was working. That afternoon, Patricia called me into her office. Tom was there too. They were uncomfortable. Patricia kept rearranging papers on her desk. Tom wouldn't quite meet my eyes. "Sarah, we want you to know we take these allegations very seriously," Patricia said. "Karen has briefed us on the situation." "The false allegations," I said. Patricia nodded. "We're not making any judgments, but we think it's important that you know we value diversity here at Meridian. We would never tolerate discrimination of any kind." They were covering themselves, creating a paper trail in case this turned into a lawsuit. I know that because I didn't do what she accused me of. Jessica made those comments, I confronted her, and she turned it around on me. "We're going to monitor the situation," Tom said. "Make sure nothing like this happens again." Nothing changes. Jessica would continue doing what she was doing, and I would continue being the problem employee who needed monitoring. I went home that night and couldn't eat dinner, just sat on my couch staring at the wall. Month 6, March. The tension in the office was thick. People had heard about the HR complaint, not the details, but enough to know something had happened. The whispers got worse. The isolation got worse. Emma, who'd been friendly with me before, stopped talking to me entirely. David avoided me in the halls. Even Tom, who'd at least pretended to listen to my complaints, started keeping his distance. Jessica, meanwhile, was thriving. She got assigned to a major new client, a pharmaceutical company worth millions in annual billings. Patricia praised her work in team meetings, held her up as an example of the kind of initiative and dedication they wanted to see. I kept my head down, did my work, documented everything, took my notebooks home every night so they wouldn't disappear from my desk. My doctor, Dr. Ramirez, noticed the change in me during a routine physical. "Sarah, your blood pressure is elevated. Have you been under unusual stress?" I laughed. It came out bitter. "You could say that." She asked questions. I answered. The whole story came pouring out. Mike, Jessica, the harassment, the isolation, the false accusations. Dr. Ramirez listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "How's your sleep?" "Not great. I wake up around 3 most nights and can't get back to sleep." "Appetite?" "I've lost about 10 pounds since December." She made notes in my chart. "Sarah, I'm concerned about your stress levels. This work situation is affecting your physical health. Have you considered leaving?" "And let her win?" "This isn't about winning. This is about your well-being. No job is worth destroying your health." I promised to think about it. I didn't. Month 7, April. Spring in the city, everything blooming and bright. I felt like I was moving through fog. I planned my annual leave, 3 weeks in May, my first real vacation in 2 years. I'd been putting it off, afraid of what would happen if I left the office for that long. But Dr. Ramirez had been insistent. "You need a break, Sarah. You need distance from the situation, 3 weeks minimum." I scheduled it, May 15th through June 2nd. Put in the request in early April. Patricia approved it without comment. Then I started preparing for my absence. I was professional about it. I'd always been professional. That was my nature. Even when everything was falling apart, I did my job correctly. I trained the entire team on my processes, scheduled individual sessions with each person who might need to handle my work while I was gone, walked them through the database systems, the client files, the deadline tracking, the escalation procedures. I created a comprehensive manual, 37 pages. Took me 2 weeks working late every night. Step-by-step instructions for every scenario I could think of. What to do if a client misses a documentation deadline, how to handle urgent requests, how to process different types of filings, troubleshooting for common database errors, emergency contact information for critical clients. I color-coded sections, used screenshots with annotations, created decision trees for complex processes, built in redundancy so if someone didn't understand one explanation, there were 2 other ways to find the information. I made it foolproof, or so I thought. I printed copies, bound them with plastic comb binding, put one on everyone's desk who might need to cover my work, put an extra copy in the shared filing cabinet. The team seemed grateful. People thanked me for being so thorough. Emma, who'd been avoiding me for weeks, actually smiled and said this would be really helpful. Jessica said nothing, just took her copy of the manual and set it on her desk without opening it. I left on a Friday, May 14th, my last day before vacation. I sent a final email to the whole team with my contact information, though I emphasized it was for emergencies only. I'd be mostly offline. I cleaned off my desk, watered the small plants I kept by my computer, made sure all my files were organized and labeled. I drove to my sister's place upstate that afternoon. Lena had been begging me to visit for months. She lived in a small town in the Catskills, worked as a teacher, had a life that seemed impossibly calm and stable compared to mine. "You look terrible," she said when I arrived. "When's the last time you slept?" "I sleep." "How much?" I shrugged. Lena hugged me hard. "You're going to rest. No work email, no work calls, nothing. Promise me." I promised. I tried, I really did. But even away from the office, I couldn't shake the anxiety. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning thinking about deadlines, wondering if they were managing without me, imagining disasters. Lena made me go hiking, made me help her plant her garden, made me cook dinner with her. Slowly, gradually, I started to relax, started to sleep a little better, started to remember what it felt like to not be constantly on edge. By week 2, I was actually feeling almost human again. By week 3, I was dreading going back. "Don't go back," Lena said on my last evening at her place. "Just quit. Find something else." I can't let her win. "It's not about winning, Sarah. Look what that job is doing you." The same thing Dr. Ramirez had said, but I didn't listen. I came back 3 weeks later on a Monday morning, June 3rd, drove into the city Sunday night, slept poorly in my own bed, woke up with that familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach. I arrived at the office at 8:30, normal time. My desk was buried. 3 weeks of work completely untouched. Files stacked in my inbox, some of them slipping off onto the floor. Emails marked urgent that no one had addressed. Client requests that had been sitting for days, some nearly 2 weeks old. I looked at the pile in confusion, checked my email, client messages forwarded to the general team inbox, all marked from my attention. None of them answered. The manual was still on the shelf where I'd left it. I picked it up. The plastic comb binding was unbroken. The pages were pristine. No one had opened it. No one had even cracked the spine. I walked around the office. Other copies of the manual sat on desks, equally untouched. One person had used theirs as a coaster. There was a coffee ring on the cover. I was confused. I didn't understand. The work was time sensitive. Some of these deadlines were critical. How had they just let it sit? I started working through the backlog, stayed until 7 that night, trying to catch up, came in early Tuesday, stayed late again. By Wednesday afternoon, I was starting to make progress, but I was exhausted. The 3 weeks of rest had evaporated like they'd never happened. Wednesday evening, we had our weekly team meeting. 4 o'clock, conference room. Everyone filed in. Patricia at the head of the table, Tom to her right, Jessica sat directly across from me. We went through the usual agenda items, project updates, client news, upcoming deadlines. Then Jessica looked directly at me. "Sarah, you're about 2 weeks behind on processing. The Chen account is approaching penalty territory. So is Martinez and Associates. Some of these client requests have been sitting since mid-May." I stared at her. "I just got back from vacation. This work wasn't touched while I was gone." "We all have our own responsibilities. No one had time to cover your workload on top of their own." I provided a complete manual, 37 pages of instructions. "The manual was helpful," Jessica said, her tone perfectly pleasant, "but it couldn't replace having you here. Some of us just don't have your expertise." It sounded like a compliment. It was designed to sound like a compliment, but her eyes were cold. "I'm starting to wonder if you're really up to this job anymore. Maybe you need additional training, some refresher courses on time management." Patricia was nodding slightly, concerned expression. "Sarah, this is a pattern we've been seeing. The errors before your vacation, now this backlog. We need to have a serious conversation about performance expectations." Performance expectations? My voice was rising. I couldn't help it. "I trained everyone. I documented everything. I left detailed instructions." "Let's not make excuses," Tom said. "We need to talk about solutions going forward." I looked around the table. Emma was studying her notepad. David was checking his phone. Patricia and Tom were looking at me with disappointed concern. Jessica was watching with that same flat, unreadable expression she'd had in the break room months ago. No one was going to defend me. No one was going to point out that they deliberately let my work pile up. No one was going to acknowledge what was really happening. They'd let the work sit for 3 weeks, let it pile up deliberately so Jessica could do this, so they could question my competence in front of the entire team, so they could build a case for my failure. Something inside me just broke. I stood up. The chair scraped against the floor. Everyone looked at me. I picked up my notepad, picked up my pen, picked up my phone. I walked out of the conference room without saying a word. The office went completely silent. I could feel everyone watching me as I walked to my desk, grabbed my purse from the bottom drawer, grabbed my car keys, and left. I didn't look back, didn't stop, just walked through the office, down the elevator, across the parking garage to my car. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely get the key in the ignition. I drove straight to Dr. Ramirez's office, walked in without an appointment. The receptionist took one look at my face and got the doctor immediately. Dr. Ramirez brought me into her office, closed the door. "Sarah, what happened?" I told her. The words came out in a rush. The vacation, the untouched work, the meeting, Jessica's performance in front of everyone, the realization that it had been deliberate. When I finished, I was crying. I hadn't cried once in 9 months of harassment, but I was crying now. Dr. Ramirez handed me tissues, waited for me to calm down. Then she pulled out her prescription pad. "I'm writing you a medical certificate, unfit for work, indefinite period. You're not going back there, Sarah. This ends now." "I can't just quit." "Yes, you can, and you will. This job is destroying you. You've lost weight, your blood pressure is through the roof, you're not sleeping, you're having panic attacks. Another month of this and you'll be the one in the hospital." She wrote the certificate, signed and dated it, handed it to me. "Go home, send your resignation. Do not go back to that office. Do you understand me?" I nodded, took their certificate, left. I went home, sat at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, wrote my resignation letter. 2 paragraphs, professional, unemotional. "I regret to inform you that I am resigning from my position at Meridian Solutions effective immediately. Please find attached a medical certificate indicating I am unfit to work my notice period. I will arrange to collect my personal belongings at a mutually convenient time." I attached the certificate, CC'd Patricia, Tom, and Karen. Sent it at 6:43 p.m. Then I closed my laptop and sat in the dark. An hour later, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. Patricia was standing on my doorstep. I didn't want to let her in, but I opened the door. "Sarah." She looked uncomfortable, kept shifting her weight. "Can we talk?" "I don't think there's anything to talk about. Please, just give me 5 minutes." I let her in. Didn't offer her a seat. We stood in my entryway. "The company is in chaos without you," Patricia said. "I didn't realize how much you were holding together. I'm asking you to reconsider. We need you. You needed me 9 months ago when I was being harassed and you did nothing. I know we mishandled the situation with Jessica, but we can fix this. I can fix this. Just come back. Will you stop Jessica's behavior?" She hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. "I'll talk to her. I'll make it clear that certain behaviors won't be tolerated, but I can't promise immediate changes. These things take time to address properly. HR processes, documentation. Then I can't come back." "Sarah, please." "I'm done, Patricia. You chose who you believed months ago. You chose wrong, and now you have to live with the consequences." She tried to argue, tried to negotiate, offered me a raise, offered me additional support, offered me Jessica's termination, though we both knew she didn't mean it. I said no to everything. She left. I watched her car pull away from my window. I returned to the office once, the following Saturday, when I knew the building would be empty, used my keycard, which apparently still worked. The office was silent, lights off. That strange quality that offices have on weekends, like abandoned movie sets. I went to my desk, started packing. Personal photos in frames, the coffee mug Lena had given me with "World's Okayest Sister" printed on it, a sweater I kept in the bottom drawer for when the AC was too cold, a box of tea, a small succulent plant. Packed it all in a cardboard box I'd brought from home. I left my keys and access card on Patricia's desk, wrote a brief note, retrieved personal belongings, building access returned herewith. Then I walked toward the exit, took the long way, past the document room. We had a document destruction area, industrial shredder for confidential client files, big machine, the kind that could handle staples and paper clips. We were required to shred everything with client information before throwing it away. I walked past it, saw my manual sitting on the shelf nearby. Someone had moved it from Jessica's desk after I left, probably cleaning up, probably planning to use it now that I was gone. I picked it up. 37 pages of institutional knowledge, everything I'd learned in 2 years, every process I'd built, every shortcut I'd discovered, every solution to every problem that came up in our specific workflow with our specific clients using our specific systems, everything they'd need to keep things running smoothly. I fed it into the shredder, page by page, watched the blades tear through the color-coded sections, through the screenshots, through the decision trees, through every carefully written instruction. I knew exactly what I was doing. They'd be lost without it. The other copies were probably still on people's desks, but I knew no one had opened them. No one had learned the processes, and without me there to train someone new, those copies were just words on paper, meaningless without context. Then I walked out of Meridian Solutions for the last time, locked the door behind me, drove home in silence. 2 years passed. I found a new job within a month. A friend from college worked at a competitor firm, had heard I'd left Meridian, asked if I wanted to interview. They hired me at 15% more than Meridian had been paying me. Better benefits, better culture, management that actually responded to concerns. I rebuilt my health, started sleeping again. The constant knot of anxiety in my chest that I'd carried for 9 months finally dissolved. I gained back the weight I'd lost. My blood pressure returned to normal. Dr. Ramirez was thrilled. I didn't think about Meridian much, didn't follow up on what happened there. I'd moved on, built a new professional life, made new colleagues, found my equilibrium again. Until I ran into Lisa Martinez at a coffee shop downtown. It was a Saturday morning in early June, 2 years and a few weeks since I'd left. I was in line at a place I didn't usually go to, only stopped in because it was near where I'd parked for a farmer's market. Sarah? Sarah Chen? I turned around. Lisa was standing behind me, smiling. Lisa had worked at Meridian in business development. She'd been one of the few people who tried to defend me near the end, though quietly. A kind word here and there, a sympathetic look across the conference room table. Lisa, how are you? Good, really good. Still at Meridian, actually. You? I'm at Sterling Consulting now. It's been great. We got our coffees and grabbed a table outside. Caught up on the basics. Her daughter was starting college, her husband had changed jobs. I told her about my new position, kept it light. Then she leaned forward. Her expression shifted. Something serious. You won't believe what happened after you left. I felt my stomach tighten. I'm not sure I want to know. No, you need to hear this because you were right about everything. She told me the company had struggled for months after my departure. My replacement, a guy named Marcus, who'd seemed competent in the interview, quit after 6 weeks. Said the job was impossible. The systems were too complicated. No one could explain how things worked. They hired someone else. She lasted 3 months. They brought in consultants to document my processes, paid them thousands of dollars. The consultants spent 2 weeks interviewing people, examining the database, reviewing files. They produced a 60-page report that basically said the workflow was too customized, too dependent on institutional knowledge that existed in only one person's head. They'd lost 2 major clients to deadline penalties, compliance filings that missed deadlines because no one processed them correctly. The penalties ran into 6 figures. Patricia had apparently been frantic. Tom had taken a leave of absence from stress. But here's the thing about Jessica, Lisa said. She paused, looked at me carefully, like she was trying to gauge how I'd react. What about her? 3 months after you left, September, she had a complete breakdown at work. I set down my coffee. What do you mean, breakdown? Middle of the day, middle of the office. She just started screaming, crying, couldn't stop, threw her keyboard across the room, started saying things that didn't make sense, that people were conspiring against her, that we all hated her, that she couldn't trust anyone. Lisa's voice was quiet now. Other people at nearby tables might hear. Karen called 911. They sent an ambulance. Paramedics came. She fought them, had to be sedated. It was awful, Sarah, really awful. People were traumatized. Where do they take her? Psychiatric facility, Mount Sinai, I think. She was there for 2 weeks, inpatient. I sat back in my chair, tried to process this information, tried to figure out what I felt. They diagnosed her with borderline personality disorder, Lisa continued. I only know because Patricia told the senior staff, explained why Jessica had been acting the way she had, the intense reactions, the fear of abandonment. Apparently, Mike's firing had triggered something in her. She'd attached herself to him as a mentor figure, and when he was suddenly gone, she fixated on you as the cause, like you'd taken him away from her. That doesn't excuse what she did to me. No, it doesn't, but it explained it. Patricia said Jessica's therapist told them it was textbook. Black and white thinking, splitting, intense, unstable relationships, rapid escalation from idealization to devaluation. Lisa reached across the table, touched my hand. Management finally understood what you went through. Patricia felt terrible. She kept saying they wished they'd listened to you, that they'd been so focused on avoiding drama, on keeping everyone happy, that they'd enabled someone who was clearly unwell to torture you for months. Did anyone tell her that? I asked. Patricia, did anyone tell her that I tried to report it, that I documented everything, that I asked for help and got nothing? I told her, multiple times. So did Karen, actually. Karen felt awful. She said she should have taken your complaints more seriously, should have recognized the pattern earlier. Too little, too late. But I didn't say that. How is Jessica now? I asked. She's on leave, medical leave, has been for almost 2 years now. I don't know if she'll come back. Last I heard, she was living with her parents, getting ongoing treatment, medication, therapy. She's apparently doing better, but still not stable enough to work. We sat in silence for a moment. The farmer's market crowd flowed past us on the sidewalk. Normal people living normal lives. You know what the worst part is? Lisa said. After everything came out, after the diagnosis, people started rewriting history, saying they'd always known something was wrong with Jessica, that they'd been concerned, like they hadn't all been perfectly happy to go along with her version of events when it was happening. Did anyone think to apologize to me? Lisa looked uncomfortable. Patricia asked me if I was still in touch with you. I think she wanted to reach out, but I told her I didn't have your contact information. You don't. I know. I'm sorry, Sarah. I should have done more when you were there. I should have spoken up more loudly. I was scared of becoming a target myself, and that's not an excuse, but it's the truth. I appreciated the honesty. It's okay. I understand. Is it okay? Really? I thought about it. Was I okay? Had I healed from those 9 months? Mostly. I still had moments, still had dreams sometimes about being back in that conference room, defending myself against accusations I couldn't disprove. Still felt a twist of anxiety when someone questioned my work, even reasonable questions. But I was okay. I was better than okay. I was healthy. I was successful. I'd survived. Yeah, I said, I'm okay. We finished our coffee, talked about lighter things. When we parted ways, Lisa hugged me. I'm glad you got out, she said. I'm glad you're doing well. Me too. I walked to the farmer's market, bought vegetables I didn't need, thought about Jessica in a psychiatric hospital, then living with her parents, rebuilding her life from fragments. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt sad. For everyone. For Jessica, who was sick and hadn't gotten help in time. For myself, for 9 months of torture I didn't deserve. For a workplace that had let it all happen because addressing conflict was uncomfortable. I think about it sometimes, whether I should have stayed and fought harder, whether destroying that manual was petty revenge or justified protection of my intellectual labor, whether Jessica's diagnosis excuses what she did to me. But mostly, I think about the fact that I trusted my gut. I documented everything, even when it felt paranoid. I protected my mental health, even when it felt like giving up. And when staying became impossible, I walked away. Jessica needed help I couldn't give her, but I also didn't deserve what she put me through. Both things can be true at once. Some situations don't have clean resolutions. Sometimes the villain is sick, not evil. Sometimes the people who should have helped you failed because they were weak, not malicious. Sometimes the only thing you can do is remove yourself and let the pieces fall where they will. I'm okay with that now. It took time, therapy of my own, distance, but I'm okay with it. I learned that no job is worth your health, that documentation is power, that sometimes the system fails you and you have to save yourself, that walking away isn't weakness, it's survival. And I learned that destroying that manual wasn't about revenge, it was about boundaries. They wanted my labor, but not my humanity. They wanted the benefits of my expertise, but not the responsibility of protecting me from harassment. So when I left, I took my expertise with me. They had to learn the hard way that people aren't replaceable, that institutional knowledge has value, that treating employees like interchangeable parts has consequences. I don't regret it. Not the reporting of the fraud, not the complaints to management, not the resignation, not the shredded manual. I did what I thought was right, and then I did what I needed to survive. And in the end, I survived. That's enough. Like and subscribe if you feel I did the right thing in the end. Also, don't forget to comment.